Hello, you wonderful people, and welcome to another episode of Not Too Comic Book. This being a show where we talk about TV shows that are adaptations of comic books. For today's episode, I'm going to talk about episode 4 of Noblesse. A lot of really interesting things went down in this episode, so let's break it down. So obviously picking up in the aftermath of last episode of M21 going off with the DA5 people, in particular, Shark and Hammer and Kronz. I love that. Obviously, Regis is a lot more bugged by it than he's letting on, and by the time they get back to Frankenstein's place, that he's kind of bothered by it, and he's like, oh, it doesn't matter. Even being like, oh, there's no way I'd be so bothered by it. But Sarah's the one kind of pointing out that he is, under what the circumstances were that M21 left with his friends about something about being on a mission. And it's so interesting because the way Sarah talks to them, especially with stuff later on, she says stuff where I guess she feels the need of like, I don't need to be as like carefree about what I say. I mean, to be fair, it's also like, right, they're not as like, oh, we shouldn't say all this around people, but I guess like maybe that was always the thing that she picked up on things about Frankenstein and Rye a lot quicker than Regis did. I don't know, just because like a lot of those like he'll make some of those statements around them, but like she is kind of a little more blunt with what she says. She just kind of casually drops stuff, and I'm like, probably shouldn't be having those conversations or saying that because that wouldn't make any sense to a human. But obviously for Frankenstein, he's worried, like, right, was M21 playing us the entire time? Obviously he knows that their whole mission was to get the coffin, which includes his master, but it's like, if that's the case, then does that mean everything was a ploy? Like, now that he has that information, this could make things more difficult. But obviously M21's been gone for a couple days. Regis is acting like it doesn't bother him. Once again, it still does, especially when he has Manabu and you constantly bringing it up about like, you know, because they're so used to him being there, and now all of a sudden, and he's going, was like, oh, maybe he's sick or something, but he's just like, whatever. It's not like I'm worried about it, but you know, once again, it kind of puts a smile on Sarah's face because it's like, oh, let's go over to Rye's place afterwards and stuff like that and hang out all together. But at the same time, M21 is being interrogated by DA5, in particular, Shark laying a smackdown on him. He realizes, obviously, it's like, right, they don't know all that's going on. He's able to kind of figure out that they're still in the dark about certain things, that, like, right, that I actually betrayed the Union, and, like, but they know a little bit, obviously, about what the mission is, obviously, about the Noblesse and the coffin, but they're still in the dark about so many other factors. So he uses this to his advantage. I'll give you the information you want if you give me the information I want. And that involves telling me the names of my teammates and stuff, like background on them, my comrades that are dead. But it's like, well, we can't do that. We don't have access to that information. But Tao can get that information. And it's like, right, Takio offers him water, and he's like, right, I want food, but I don't want what Hammer's eating. He's like, what do you want? I'm like, are you going to say it? And he's like, oh, he says that magical word too, ramen. So I guess just kind of like his little, I guess in his mind, it's like, that's kind of a bit of an inside joke you guys aren't a part of. But what I thought was interesting is Manabu ends up meeting up with Tao, which I love that whole interaction. Once again, they're kind of geeking out because Manabu was kind of reluctant at first, but then it's like, oh, you want to hang out and everything, and like, why were you doing what you're doing? It's like, oh no, like I knew I wasn't going to get any useful information, but I just like the back and forth, and I figured you did too. So it's like, oh wow, you made this protection thing yourself. It's like, oh, that's so cool. So they kind of have their back and forth, but they both relate about the fact is that, right, there's strong people in their life who are all about brute strength, who are just kind of idiots, and it's like, oh yeah, like they both like lament about it and kind of sigh about it. But I love that Manabu ends up calling him like Aniki, which I'm like, that's probably like one of my favorite like because I'm sure like it gets used in Japan, like obviously in real life too, but it's just like it really gets used a lot, like a, you know, kind of big brother boss gang type of thing of just like Aniki. But it's just like, I don't know, it's probably one of my favorite little things, and just like when someone's like Aniki, you know, I don't know why that word like that just resonates with me so much. But like Tao even kind of being caught off guard when Manabu calls him that, and just also like the way Manabu looks at him like that. It's like, oh, because for the first time he's kind of connected with someone else, because I think for Tao it's always been the thing of like, right, I am the smartest person in the room. No one really appreciates my skills. They kind of like just show me nothing but contempt because they're the strong ones and I'm just like the nerd behind the computer. But he found a kindred spirit, even someone that kind of looks up to him and is like, oh, can I call you Aniki? And he's like, yeah, sure. And he's just never had that connection with another person before. And then you have like Takio, who talks about, we kind of find out, it's revealed like the only reason why he's doing all of this is because the union knows where his sister is, and they're kind of using her as leverage to keep him doing what he's doing. Because after everything with M21, Tao was kind of like, you're not like the others. Like, the fact is that you're going so easy on him like that, Because the others, their reasoning for being here is just because, well, they enjoy what they do, but it's not like Takio does. It's like, I just do, like, I'm do what I'm supposed to. It's part of the job, but it's not like, oh, because he loves the job. It's because he's kind of forced to be in this position. And obviously, like, Tao doesn't really do the more dirty work stuff. I mean, maybe he has, but it's mainly like, nah, I handle things on the more, like, hacking side of things. So he's just not as much a part of this because, once again, he's more the brains. Everyone else is the brawn, and he just feels even more like an outsider, so... But I thought it was interesting when Takio runs into Sarah and Yu ends up beating up those guys, mugging him. At first I was like, was that done on purpose? But I'm like, no, I guess not. I guess it's just like I was getting mugged, and he's like, oh, I guess he was kind of caught off guard by that. And then he just kind of plays along when Yu saves him, like, oh my god, thank you. It's like, you guys are like a couple. Are you on a date? And because you walking with Sarah kind of realize it, because I guess now that like Manabu doesn't like her like that, and at least he doesn't believe he does, so it's kind of like, oh, he's kind of recognizing like, oh, like I'm here alone with Sarah and she's so pretty, and then it's like, oh, you look like a lovely couple, are you on a date? And he's like, well, and she immediately shuts it down, no, and he's like, oh, you kind of feel bad for him a little bit, but it's for that moment, like, Takio was kind of like, putting up this, like, appearance of just kind of like, and then he immediately kind of, like, returns to his normal demeanor, because I guess for a second, it's like, right, he got to leave, like, the trained fighter and assassin that he is behind and just got to be kind of a normal person, because he hasn't really been able to just be himself for so long. He's had to keep up the front, kind of pushing his feelings down and focus on the mission of everything I'm doing, every person I kill, everything is just me one step closer to being closer to my sister. But after all of this, Tao was like, I could find your sister for you, which Takio immediately, because of the group they're a part of, is like, what do you want? Like, what kind of deal you make? He's like, no. After spending time with Manabu, it made him go like, kind of made him soften up a little and kind of go like, right, like, I actually found this connection with someone, and he's like, I don't even know what it's like to be a sibling, but for first time he's kind of feeling it himself, and he's like, right, like, yeah, you can tell, like, me, he's almost like, well, if something happened to Manabu, like, if I didn't know where he was, if I, this is someone I just made this connection with, I can't even imagine, like, a legit sister, so it's like, if you want me to, I can find her, I can't promise anything, let you know if she's still alive. He's, ended up figuring out that, right, she's most likely being captured so that you do what they want you to do. But then, later on, Shark is still pushing buttons until, like, because M21 kind of pointed out, like, right, you can kill me if you want to, but if any information that's lost, it's going to fall back on you because you're going to be the one that failed everything because of that. But then, like, Shark is also talking about, like, I'm just going to kill him, you too soft-hearted Takio. Like, all those women and children you left alive, just because your weakness, but it's like, don't worry, I killed them afterwards, which Takio never knew that. But it's like, right, I killed all of them because that's what the job is. But don't get mad at me, that's not just on me. Like, the boss orders that. And because I guess for a moment, Takio didn't realize, like, their boss was so bloodthirsty. It's like he's that much all about the Union. It's like, for him, it's like, I'm a soldier following orders. Everyone has to be wiped out. If anyone knows anything about the Union, they have to be wiped out. It's supposed to stay a secret. So that's what that ultimately ends up coming down to. And Tao ends up having to stop him from pulling the trigger on Shark. But it's just like a frustrating thing of him even cracking jokes like, oh, your sister might already be already dead for all you know. So at the same time, Regis goes toe to toe with Shark and Hammer to a certain extent when they reveal themselves, because Shark figured like, oh, like he can mess around with them, in particular Regis, before he uses him as kind of leverage to force M21's hands, because it's like, right, you must mean something to him for him to kind of like left you behind and try to pretend like he had nothing to do with this. Granted, he underestimated Regis, and Regis's power isn't as powerful as Rai. Once again, it shows you the difference between them, because Jake was able to kind of break free to a certain extent, but he still had to go full force to break free from Rai's like power of telling him to kind of kneel. And even then, like, it's even full force, Rai still made him submit. But like showing you the difference that Regis can't even in the normal state, he couldn't hold Shark in that position for too long. And each time he's like, you're doing a pretty good job of like making sure I don't hit any of your vital organs. And then I think we kind of get our introduction to like this the DA5's like gimmick, and it's those pills, the one that Shark took. If I'm not mistaken, which I could be, I think that's the entire squad's gimmick, that each one of them like has like their supplements or pills like that like enhance their powers, like turn them monstrous. Like, I believe all of them do that. I think that's kind of that unit's gimmick, but I could be wrong. Like I said, I feel like that's not just a Shark thing. I think this is supposed to be introduction to that, because you'll see, because that actually I believe I think this is actually kind of the foundation of some stuff later on. I think the pills become I think if I remember correctly, I think they become more of a thing later on. They continue to be a thing even later on to a certain extent. Obviously without going into spoilers too much about the circumstances around that. But I believe this is kind of where that starts, and it does continue from here beyond just the DA5. But like I said, we'll get into that later when it eventually comes up or gets hinted towards. But even Regis is like freezing him doesn't work anymore. And obviously he's able to keep up with Regis, but even Regis being like, right, the only reason why I was holding back because you're a friend of that idiot, M21's, and he stopped. And despite everything, Shark's almost like, wait, what? Like, he was able to keep up with me? Like, because Regis wasn't going on. Once again, him and Sarah might still be kind of a little bit apart from Rai, but that still doesn't mean you should underestimate them, because they are still nobles nonetheless. Granted, like over the years, that family bloodline, like that power has diminished, so it's not as great as it used to be, but it's still enough for kind of guys on the lower end like this. But because you and Manabu end up getting captured, it's kind of like fine, and he submits. And they end up bringing them back, and it's like, oh, look at the prey we hunted. Which obviously it's not just M21 that's shocked by this development. It's also Takeo and Tao, because these are two people that they like, and it's like, right, they didn't want innocent people dragged into this, especially Takeo, because it's like, this is just a person who helped me, and I think being around them probably made him think about who he was when he was with his sister, and who he kind of had to let go of. But it's like, right, like, we don't need to do all this. But once again, regardless of how they feel about it, the boss is still going to be like, no, do it. I mean, if they know anything, they have to be wiped out anyway. But also if it forces, because he's been playing coy, like he's like, oh, I'm going along with what you want, because I'm sure like it was maybe Shark and Hammer made that decision by themselves, but it's like it seems like they kind of don't make those decisions without their bosses say so. So he's there in the room, not saying anything, he just wants to say it. Like, I think he had his arms crossed or whatever. Like, I think it's not going to be a thing of like, hey boss, can we stop them? It's like, no, do this, because M21 thinks he's got the advantage over us. Well, we've got the leverage this time. Like, obviously these people mean something to you, so if you don't cooperate, we'll kill them. So his situation is going to be a little... this isn't going to go as smoothly as M21 was hoping. I mean, the main purpose of... It makes you wonder how he was going to resolve all this once he did get the information he wanted. Like, what would he have done? I don't think he would have sold out Rai or Frankenstein, but who knows. kind of a moot point at this point in time because things aren't going the way he planned. But at the same time, like I brought up earlier, like Sarah kind of drops the front of like, right, I lost my connection with Regis, so Rye and Frankenstein know something's up. So we'll see where all this ends up taking us going forward into the next episode. But really, that's all I'm going to talk about. So the next time we meet, be happy, be safe, live life to the fullest, and enjoy it. Good day, and goodbye.